about today, like the building blocks of websites. But I enjoy being able to help people get there because once you get there with either AI platforms or HubSpot or any like you start to be able to understand this is why we say you can do whatever you want uh, at some point, but you really need to understand how this stuff comes together, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So
And
what did you want to chat about today exactly?
okay, so I got a topic with me that is, I think, something for everybody who's working in HubSpot. So, regardless if you are a developer, a marketer, salesperson, project manager, I think you can or you will be able to get your diamonds out of this topic, I would say. Because if you're working in HubSpot, you have most likely heard of growth driven design. So, uh, in conclusion, I would say it's like if you're okay, let's get or let's talk about a specific example, right? So, for instance, website, because this is a website stream. Uh, the designer will have the task to design a website. The developer does develop the website. Project manager combine everything, maybe communicating it with the client, other stakeholders. Like many parts. And traditional web design development, it's basically the same. So from the approach, uh, it's like, okay, we are building a website, and then the whole process takes or can take months or even years. And when the website is uh, ready, launched, everybody is happy, but maybe on the next day, somebody will, somebody from the internal team will visit the website and be like, hmm, this looks outdated. Or, hey, I have an idea for a new feature. The website launched yesterday, don't forget, right? But hey,
Every single time.
yeah. And I mean, I would assume that almost everybody had or was in this position at some point. Like, hey, can we include XYZ in the website? And then with traditional web design or web development, this is the point where the whole stress starts, I would say, right? Because the developers weren't prepared for extending the current code. The designers might not have designed the new elements if it's a brand new element. And the project manager was like, okay, but all milestones are checked, right? So we are done. And sales comes in and is like, yeah, but this has to be priced because we already got paid or will be paid for this, and this new feature is out of scope. So there are many instances that rely on that, on this approach, and this leads quite often to not the best result, I would say.
I mean, I'd say
So
it's unfortunately, it's one of the most common results
yeah,
of the past. I don't think it happens. I mean, it really depends on which circles you work in. Um, but I don't think it happens nearly as much as it used to, just because there's so many like drag and drop do it yourself type tools out
Mm,
there. People are becoming more aware of what they're able to do, and naturally that just
yeah,
provides the flexibility to be able to tinker in a lot of these tools. But almost everybody you meet has some kind of baggage related to this having happened,
mm,
before.
yeah,
If it's not their current website, it was a past website. Um, so I think it's, again, we hear about scope creep.
yeah,
Somebody is incurring some kind of costs that were not expected, and were not talked about, and naturally that's where relationships get stressed and go off the rails. Especially when you've got either sales or a leader of the group that just comes in and be like, "Oh, that's wrong," or we just did a new logo yesterday and we weren't telling you, uh, and you hard coded everything in, and the system doesn't. I need to change it in 1,000 places now instead of one place, right?
mm,
All this stuff happens. So being able to break it down into what we're talking about today, like
yeah,
almost, it doesn't 100% prevent those scenarios, but it does prevent most of the heartache and stress related to those scenarios,
yeah,
I'd say.
exactly. Yeah, so I mean, I have a small presentation prepared. Well, I've combined this knowledge in a slide deck. And
Let's do it.
yeah, so I would say let's do that. Um, and if you see, this is tailored towards theme development. So the upcoming examples will be around theme development because a theme is basically your sandbox for websites, right? But you can apply that to almost every aspect of your work, your life. It's up to you, right? So, if you're a developer, you might have been in such a situation, right? So, yep, this is more like the traditional development that we just talked about. And uh, this approach that I will talk about is more like this, right?
Yes. Ah, yes.
So if you do things right, you will have all the power and make your life way, way easier, right? So let's drop the curtain on the naming. It's called Atomic Design. And if you haven't heard of that, imagine it like Lego blocks, right? Because I would say everybody or every person on earth has heard of Lego or maybe build stuff with Lego. And as mentioned, um, adapted to your requirements. So there's no only this is right or this is completely wrong. And this is the great thing about that because it's so, let's call it hyper flexible, that you everybody can get something out of it. And if we are talking about building blocks, those are basically the five building blocks of atomic design in theme development. So you got atoms, and if you're a developer, atoms, those are basically your variables that you put in into your theme or into your code. And if you combine those atoms together, or fuse them, they become molecules. Molecules can be objects, arrays, macros, right? And organisms are the bigger part. So those are the things that the non-developer will use to create pages, right? So the last step, because in HubSpot it's um, a bit different. We have a step in between modules and pages, and this is a good thing because templates are reusable in HubSpot. So this means you can create a template for products or services, just a simple text page for your legal pages, right? So you don't have to create pages over or templates over and over, but rather combine them. And this is something very, very powerful because if you will be put in the position at some point in the future where there will be like, hey, we want to update all legal pages. Like we want to have an anchor navigation on all the pages. Something very, very simple. In a traditional way, it would mean you as a developer or marketer would need to edit every page, right? And for legal pages, I mean, okay, let's be honest, there are most times maybe 4 or 5 of them with translations if you have them, but not many. If we're talking about products, I was in a position where I was talking to a potential customer and he had around 100,000 products. So this is a whole different topic, right? And just imagine editing 100,000 pages by hand. Not possible in your whole lifetime. HubSpot has HubDB, custom objects for that, which will make your life even easier. But again, those pages are built upon templates or generated with templates. And the great thing in if we're talking about thousands of pages, you can update everything at once. This is amazing because then you will shrink down the whole workload that is not doable in your whole lifetime into maybe a few minutes, maybe a few hours. Let it be a few days, right? But just compare something like your whole life versus a few days, right? So this is something, right?
Yeah, and
And
that's our. I think that's a great point because so many companies and teams don't do things they could do
yeah,
because they think it will take forever or it's the highest mountain to climb. And like if you're in RevOps and happen to be watching this and you think that, this is website stuff, I'm gonna, I that's not my expertise. I focus on the CRM. When you understand how this works and why we say one of the like for me, one of the best selling points of HubSpot, especially websites, when you get people to understand it, is the CRM plus
mm,
CMS functionality.
yeah,
So as we're looking at the screen here, examples for atoms, right? Variables. Those are properties,
mm,
properties in the CRM. Um, and like properties, we can have, uh, you know, single text fields that are hard to manage, and it's hard coded into the record, right? It's not being populated from anywhere else. Or we can set up, existing things to pull from. Molecules, it says objects right there. So objects in the CRM, that's a collection, of the atoms, of the properties. Examples of organism modules, CRM cards, right? A collection
Mm,
of properties that can be built to be presented in a specific way, depending on what kind of card you're choosing, right?
yeah.
Templates, the record view customize in settings,
Mm,
right? Same thing, so that now all 100,000, records are going to look the same or maybe different depending on which team they're on. And if we're separating, we use templates in the same way. It can be used in the same way on the website. And so when live, when your CRM user is in the CRM, pages on this slide is the CRM records view for anybody they pull up, right? So imagine, and I gave you one example from the variables, like imagine single text, field where you're just
mm,
typing it in. But for a module, a custom or a manual version of that is notes, right?
mhm.
Anytime you put information into a note that just exists for that record, that would be like hard coding that data into a specific page of the site. And then now every time we'd have to change it on 1,000 different pages, right?
Yeah,
And so that's when we let out with like understanding the building blocks, like once you see how these things connect, right? It makes the system way more accessible. So it's like, oh, we can do this. So let's do it. And then maintenance after, right? Is
yeah,
huge. Because some people might recognize, okay, this would take us a year or this would take us a lifetime. Unless we get a developer to do it, we can pay them $100,000 and do it right now. But then you get done with the project, like we talked about, and now how much is it to maintain it, to keep going to them for help, to right? So
yeah,
all this, like the same kind of page, can be built with or without this stuff,
yeah.
right? And obviously, doing it without it means manual, high cost, high maintenance. No bueno.
Nope. um, yeah. I mean, this is great that you've mentioned the CRM functionalities or the corresponding CRM functions, I would say. Um, because, as mentioned, atomic design, it's called design, but it is adaptable to everybody, or everybody can adapt it to his or her needs or requirements, right? Yeah, then since this, since this um, slide deck is for theme development, um, I had a few examples, or I have a few examples. So this is how I'm building my variables in every theme. If you're asking yourself why, I will show that in a few seconds. Mm, so this is also a whole object of variables, right? So I'm combining variables into objects, and then I'm using molecules as atoms. So I'm going back and forth, back and forth. Um, but the great thing here is once I go one step further, this or those few lines of code. I mean, if you're not a developer, um, this might be a bit confusing. But what I do here is I'm creating CSS rules for every mobile or for every breakpoint I have in this scenario, right? And this every few lines is like for tag and size in mobile font sizes. So if we go back, this is the tag on the left and the size is on the right, right? So for every tag size in font size, and unless it's title, give me a tag and also the same tag as a class. Because sometimes in development or sometimes when you're using modules or text, you want to have an H5, like very unimportant, let's put it that way, for SEO, but it should be styled as an H1. And from a SEO perspective, it would be a very bad example to just make it an H1, right? So therefore, I'm creating a class that has no effect on SEO because it's only the font size. And yeah, and I'm doing this for all um, the available variables
Yep.
and how this looks in a page editor, right? Because this is a molecule, and now we go to the modules. Uh, this is how my text or headline text module from my website looks like, right? So I have a headline input field, simple text, because I'm not a big fan of rich text for everything. Then I got a headline size, which is responsible for the SEO tag, like H1, H2, H3, and so on. And then I have a headline style, which is responsible for the class. This means I have, in this example, um, an H3 with the same class H3. If you're using it, it's fully optional, of course, but I could say, hey, I have an H3, but I want it to look like a title, which is 3 to 5 times bigger in my design, right? And I mean, I have my theme, my website is very, very special in this case because I've also included a checkbox for add headlines to the dot navigation. So if you visit my website, you will see some dots on the right side or left side, depending on which device you're visiting my website or viewing my website. And I mean, this one checkbox starts a whole JavaScript in the background. But I mean, I digest, and let's continue with atomic design. So
Yeah,
this
and
is a module.
I'll just highlight here, like
Yeah,
you maybe you're about to say it, but like what happens when you don't have this module built? We're
yeah,
directly doing stuff on the page, which is like, okay, I'm just going to change the font size because I want it to be bigger. I'm just going to click bold. I'm just going to click italics,
yeah,
right? And then
yeah,
when you have some kind of maintenance period and we're
Mm,
updating the style guidelines,
yeah.
now we have to go fix that in every spot that that change was made, which we likely don't until somebody says, hey, this
Mm,
doesn't look right.
yeah. And I was in this position in the past many times when somebody, so I was part of a redesign, or I did a redesign as a developer, and then migrated all the existing pages. And then it was like, oh, there is inline styling. And this is exactly why I don't like rich text, because this can mess everything up, right? And so, as a developer, just a quick side note, as a developer, if you're putting in a rich text into any module, into any functionality, ask the client, what functions do you really need in this rich text? Just because you as a developer can limit a rich text, right?
I did not
And
know
this is
that.
something that I recommend everybody. Mm,
And I'm
yeah,
seeing that
then
difference now on the screen. So, like, you can't, man,
yeah,
this would be beautiful. You can't change fonts and
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Exactly because of this. The rich text is very flexible in this example, but I've deactivated all the fonts. I've deactivated headline styles. I've deactivated many other features. So you can have personalization, because this is a key aspect of HubSpot. You can have bold, italic, underline, lists. I'm not sure what else is possible in this rich text, but again, this is not your typical rich text.
Right.
And this is also something that is very beneficial for user experience. Because I had a case, I mean, if we have a few minutes, um, I had a case where the client used the rich text, the default rich text, to create uh, an event agenda with tables. Yes, it's possible. Was it great? To be honest, no. And then he was like, yeah, but on my mobile phone, it looks not great. And I was like,
Yep.
yeah, because tables are not responsible and not responsive, right? And he was like, yeah, but I like it how it is. And I was like, okay, we can do something about that, but please don't use tables.
Yeah.
And if you're a developer and you are creating a theme or modifying a theme from the marketplace, and you want to prevent something like this, quick tip, you can disable uh, modules on a theme level. So, for instance, you want to make the default rich text available to your client. Go to the theme settings or the theme JSON file, and then you can um, disable all the modules that your user should not use, right? So this is also something. And if you don't know how you can do that, it's documented in the developer docs. So developers.hubspot.com. Mm, and this is something that I recommend to ask before you. This is something, a question that I will ask every client before I even start writing the code. What functions do you really need? Can we replace them with custom modules? So creating organisms, basically, right? Because yes, HubSpot has a headline module, but I think it does not have a content tab or a content option, right? And I mean, those are things that you can go, I don't know how far, because if we are thinking about personalization, smart content, A B testing, just imagine to have every little bit on a page in a single module and you have to create smart rules for every one of them. If it's one single module, you have to create it only once, right?
Yep.
Again, this is something where you can work more efficient, I would say. And therefore, before you even start to develop, sit down with a client, drink a cup of tea or coffee or whatever you want, and just make a list like, okay, do we really need this module? Do we need this one? And so on. Because in the end, it will make your life easier and most likely the client will be happier. So, templates. But to finish this off real quick, a very simple template. This is my template for my legal pages. So if you visit GraphiSpot, this is what lines underneath it. Like the legal pages. I got other pages, they have different templates, but if you visit my legal pages, those or this is the template that is behind that. Very simple. Um, I did not put in the whole layout because at the time when I was creating it, I did not have decided, um, do I want to have one rich text? Do I want it with different modules that I have, and so on? Therefore, I have only one fixed module, and this is the hero module. And then I have just an empty D&D area, which is the thing where a non-developer will work. So if you work with drag and drop, this is it. This is how a developer sees your website, I would say.
Yep.
And if you are about to create reusable templates or more complex templates like products, services, uh, case studies, completely free, right? Sure, it's recommended to put the whole structure into this template. So when a non-developer will create a new page, he will already have a pre-built layout and just has to put in the information. And pages, I mean, we already talked about that. It's very simple. It's the end result. And this is the thing that your visitors will see, right? So is it an about page? Is it the homepage, blog, legal? The list goes on, right? And yeah,
Yeah.
this is it. I think,
I think what's
yeah, this
interesting
is,
is um and where development, like the understanding of development can help a lot too. And for the same reasons you wouldn't want to develop a CRM from scratch. Like imagine just creating like, okay, here's all the properties I want to understand.
hmm,
And you build all those first. And then you're like, okay, what kind of objects do I want?
yeah,
And like, okay, well, I want a contact. So then let me grab first name and then last name, put them over here, right? Um, but also as you have pages up, like this is another thing where I've done it before, just to kind of proof of concept things.
Hmm.
But like you can do stuff like create pictures that represent design in Canva and then just put the big old image on the website page. And there's no text. There's not like it's the worst SEO tactic. It's not an SEO tactic. It's really bad, right? So don't do that for live pages. But hopefully you get the idea where finding this bridge between like the granular management and creation of things, right? Versus how easy is it to maintain. Um, and I'll say on that last example, when you had templates up, like understand, like the whole point here is to try and prevent the aspect that when you like either I'm trying to do this thing and it's just not working, or I keep on having to change this thing over and over and over. Like those are keywords that I look for to know that you aren't using templates or themes or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because this is the kind of thing where um, if you're troubleshooting a page and it's like, no, the module says it's supposed to do this, and it's not looking like that on the page. Like, go look at which template like you're using, and maybe in that theme, like it says something like whenever this, like if this then that, right? And it's
Yeah.
different on that template versus all the other templates, right? It's the beauty of being able to manage at the template level, but just
Yeah.
understand that's another variable for you to manage and discover. Um, but when you get it right, it just makes for an easier website management, and maintenance. Uh, but the other thing that came to mind as we were talking about, organisms and templates, and like this is where growth driven design comes in terms of like the mistake that I think is easy to make is that you do these things separately. You think about atomic design separately from the growth driven design, right?
Yeah.
And since growth driven design is almost all like theory and strategy, right? And you're not taking
Hmm.
into the account that this modular like piece exists, you get into
Yeah.
these debates of, well, I want the website on this side. It's like, oh, I think this would be cool on the page, right? So I want a module that looks like that. And on this side, we're talking about, okay, this is how we figure out what is actually needed on the page, like to support the user experience, because we're thinking about audience, we're thinking about messaging, like all these things. And you got to really combine those two, because it's not just a blank slate anymore on the design side when you understand this philosophy. So very powerful.
Yeah.
Well, this is fantastic. Um, I think it's again so often it's the simple things, and if you can understand, the breakdown and how these things modularize, it's not rocket science, right? Like there's code in lots of places, but the whole beauty of using a system like HubSpot is that code can be developed into things like Legos and not
Yeah.
like jars of Play-Doh every time, right? Like, okay, here's a new one. Oh, you want a different shape? You gotta just start over, like from scratch.
Hmm.
Let's put it all, let's flatten it
Yeah.
out, and then we gotta rebuild it. So I think that was a good example. I've got a I've got a what is HubSpot video that uses connects that I could probably publish sometime soon. Same principle. But yeah, man,
Awesome.
this is great. I hope it was helpful for anybody watching or listening. Um, and again, as you think about how your website's put together, how your user experience is put together on your website, who's on your team, changing things in various places, there's lots of opportunity that I guarantee that you will find. So find those opportunities, and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks, Anton.
A great one.